Jacobs-Young and our panel of expert witnesses. Wonderful to see you again and have you in front of us. I appreciate you all being here today as we review the U.S. Department of Agriculture's research, extension, and related programs ahead of the 2023 Farm Bill. Before the Thanksgiving holiday, Ranking Member Bozeman and I held the first in a series of hearings here in D.C. focused on our shared goal, passing another bipartisan Farm Bill. With respect to the research title, I look forward to working with Senator Booker and Senator Braun, who are the chair and ranking members of the subcommittee, and with every member of this committee. On our agenda today is a topic of great importance: agriculture research, extension, and education. We can't have a thriving economy if we don't make things and grow things. And agriculture research helps us do just that. Just last month, the United Nations estimated that the world population surpassed 8 billion people. That's 8 billion people who need access to safe, nutritious, and affordable food. Innovation through agricultural research is central to global food security. Thanks to the progress achieved through research, we can boost the profitability and the resiliency of our farms while adapting to and mitigating the climate crisis. It's our incredible extension and education systems that deliver valuable research findings into the hands of farmers, as well as consumers and communities. Through the support of this committee, USDA research agencies are advancing cutting-edge science and rigorous economic analysis on behalf of our farmers and ranchers. In the 2018 Farm Bill, members of this committee secured much-needed investments in USDA's agricultural research programs. That included $185 million for the Foundation for Food and Agricultural Research, which leverages public investments with private funds to address the real-world issues facing our farmers and our ranchers. We secured investments for our organic farmers, as well as reauthorized the Specialty Crop Research Initiative, benefiting Michigan's many cherry, blueberry, and asparagus growers, as well as, of course, others across the country. And for the first time, we authorized the Urban, Indoor, and Emerging Agriculture Initiative. The 2018 Farm Bill also benefited our land-grant universities, like my alma mater, Michigan State University, and the University of Arkansas. Land-grant universities are vital partners in conducting agricultural research, delivering cooperative extension, and training the next generation of leaders in the food and agriculture sector. Investments in research and extension are absolutely essential. Demand for these Farm Bill programs continues to outpace the available resources, and in recent years, funding for public agricultural research here in the U.S. has declined, which is concerning. Meanwhile, China has quintupled its investment in public agricultural research since 2000, and now invests twice as much as the U.S. does. As our farmers work to tackle the climate crisis, navigate constantly changing markets, and feed a growing global population, investments in agricultural research and trustworthy economic data will only become more important. I look forward to hearing testimony from our Undersecretary Jacobs-Young and our panel of stakeholders. And let me now turn to my friend and our ranking member, Senator Bozeman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I would also like to thank our witnesses for taking the time to join us today. Whether you're visiting us from the farm, from campus, or from the Witten Building, you provide an important perspective on how the Farm Bill enhances agricultural research, and for that we are very grateful. As Senator Stabenow just said, last month the world population reached 8 billion people, and according to most projections, we were out at our next billion people in the next 15 years. Our growing population will need access to affordable and high-quality grains, oils, and proteins, and the American farmer is well positioned to meet this demand due to our continued investments in our academic institutions and agricultural research. As we begin drafting the new Farm Bill, our priorities must take into consideration what is happening on the international stage. The world has been teetering on the brink of a massive food crisis for some time now. The Russian conflict in Ukraine, two grain exporting countries whose products feed some of the most vulnerable people in the world, has added fuel to that fire. The misguided government policies by some global leaders are only making matters worse. What happened in Sri Lanka is a perfect example. Sri Lanka was a self-sufficient for most dietary staples until its leadership instituted a ban on synthetic fertilizer and mandated an organics-only approach. A third of Sri Lanka's farmable land went fallow, food prices soared, and a man-made hunger crisis was created as a result. While Sri Lanka's plight was largely brought about by its own leadership's short-sighted decisions, it's important that we learn the right lessons from that catastrophe. This is what makes the research title of the Farm Bill so very, very important. Innovation is the answer to the challenge of feeding our growing population, as well as giving our farmers and ranchers the ability to help meet the needs of an ever-changing global dynamic. According to USDA's Economic Research Service, U.S. farmers produce 3 times as much agriculture output today as they did in 1950, while total inputs have remained virtually unchanged. It's our job to continue these advancements by providing the American agricultural research enterprise with the resources and the infrastructure that they need to do it. The Farm Bill is the most important and consistent opportunity to invest in agricultural research and extension. From programs that build capacity at our nation's land-grant institutions to world-renowned competitive grant programs such as the Agriculture and Food Research Initiative, this important title of the Farm Bill provides a broad array of authority and investment in agricultural research. Congress first recognized the need for agricultural research in 1862 and 1890 with the passage of the First and Second Morrill Act. At the time, a novel concept to further agricultural research, extension, and education. In fact, each of our witnesses today, as well as both myself and the chairwoman, are products of distinguished land-grant institutions. The success of the land-grant system is a major priority. In my view, this federal, state, and local partnership is the most capable vehicle to conduct and deliver research outcomes to farmers, ranchers, and consumers. The value of the land-grant system cannot be overstated, and I look forward to working together to strengthen the system in the next Farm Bill. Additionally, it's my goal to deliver the Farm Bill that provides focus and clarity to USDA's research enterprise. American agriculture is best served when we target our efforts and have focused, well-funded, and flexible research programs that can have widespread impact and find broad stakeholder support. Again, I would like to thank each of the witnesses for their testimony today, and I thank the chairwoman for continuing our preparations for the next Farm Bill, which will be here before we know it. Yes. With that, I yield back.
Thank you very much. And also just let me just say on a personal note that I think that our ranking member has a birthday on Saturday. So in advance, happy birthday. We won't ask you how old you will become. So, but happy birthday.
Well, when the candles are lit, it looks like a forest fire.
All right, we'll have the Forest Service there to help handle that. I'm going to turn to Senator Hyde-Smith, who I know is not going to be available for the second panel, but has a special witness from her state.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman and Ranking Member. And I'm going to ask Dr. Felicia to stand right now. We have Dr. Felicia Nave. It is truly my pleasure to introduce this lady. She is the president at Alcorn State University in Lorman, Mississippi. Alcorn is the oldest public land-grant HBCU in the entire country, serving 3,000 students from 37 states and 22 countries. Since arriving at Alcorn 3 years ago, Dr. Nave has expanded university strategic partnerships, overseen record contributions to the school, and led important upgrades to facilities and infrastructure. She's really done a great job. Dr. Nave is a member of the Executive Committee of the 1890 Council of Presidents and oversees Alcorn's Socially Disadvantaged Farmers and Ranchers Policy Center. She earned a bachelor's degree in chemistry from Alcorn and a master's in chemical and environmental engineering and PhD in engineering from the University of Toledo. Just want to welcome you, and Mr. James Hill would be so proud, and so would his children. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Senator. And Dr. Nave, we look forward to hearing you as a part of our second panel. We'll now turn to our Undersecretary. We want to welcome back to the committee Undersecretary Shavonda Jacobs-Young. It's always wonderful to see you. Dr. Jacobs-Young was confirmed by the United States Senate to serve as the Undersecretary for Research, Education, and Economics on June 7th of 2022. She also serves as USDA's Chief Scientist. In her role, Undersecretary Jacobs-Young supports our farmers and ranchers and communities by advancing critical agricultural research and economic data at the USDA. As a dedicated public servant, she has served in various roles at the department, including the former administrator of the Agricultural Research Service. So we're so pleased to have you in your position, and we welcome you today.
Thank you. Chairwoman Stabenow, Ranking Member Bozeman, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to come before you today to discuss the state of USDA's Research, Education, and Economics mission area, which includes NIFA, ARS, ERS, NAS, and the Office of the Chief Scientist. The success of the REE mission area is rooted in partnerships. Partnerships with technical assistance providers that give producers the tools they need to adapt as they feed the world. Partnerships with institutions to advance agricultural innovation and cultivate the next generation of agricultural leaders. And partnerships with Congress to ensure that decision makers have the tools they need to support farmers and ranchers across the country. Agricultural research often has a less told story, but we live and reap the benefits of it every single day. The impacts of this research shape the way we eat, clothe ourselves, and adapt to a changing climate. For example, in Kansas, NAS collects winter wheat data that's so important to our producers. ARS conducts research on grain quality and also breeds crops for genetic solutions to damaging stresses like leaf and stem rust and fusarium head blight. This research helps producers make informed decisions for their operations. Production agriculture requires constant innovation and adaptation as farmers and ranchers pursue climate-smart solutions to extreme weather, as rural businesses seek new markets, and as underserved communities seek trusted partners to tackle systemic issues. Access to information and new technologies underpins each of these objectives, and when appropriately resourced, REE is well positioned to be a partner in providing timely research, data, training, extension services, and economic analysis to support informed decision-making. The U.S. has a long track record of making investments in research that pays off for farmers and our economy. Between 1948 and 2019, total agriculture output in the United States grew by 142%. This rise cannot be attributed to increases in agricultural land or labor. Both inputs declined over this period, but stem instead from the adoption of a whole suite of publicly funded innovations in crop and livestock breeding, nutrient use, pest management, and farm and field management. These new practices have yielded significant dividends. ERS found that public agriculture research and development investments from 1900 to 2011 generated, on average, $20 in benefits to the U.S. economy for every $1 of spending. Yet federal investments in agriculture research have declined by a third in the past 2 decades, falling far behind our international partners. Once the world's leader, the United States now trails far behind other major nations in public agricultural research investments. This decline in investments means we are missing critical opportunities to capitalize on the powerful potential of our world-class scientists to conduct the type of high-risk, high-reward research necessary to meet the overlapping and rapidly emerging challenges our farmers face. The United States, through USDA, can once again lead in discovering and circulating solutions to global agriculture and natural resource challenges through highly responsive, transdisciplinary, and convergent research. That's why I'm pleased that President Biden and Secretary Vilsack are strongly committed to supporting federal agricultural research, development, and deployment, which will define innovation for decades to come. I believe a few things are critical to ensuring REE's mission stays on track. Supporting workforce development efforts, deepening our existing partnerships to bridge the gap between researchers and producers, and increasing equity in research funding and program focus. The power of information and research is undeniable, and REE is well positioned to support farmers, ranchers, scientists, and academics alike in tackling some of the most pressing issues facing our country. In my time leading REE and in my 20 years of federal service, I've had the opportunity to travel across the country and meet with many of the people you serve. I've visited states in every region of the country and many of your districts, meeting with the people you represent. They are optimistic about the future of agriculture, and so am I. President Biden, Secretary Vilsack, and REE are poised to catalyze food systems transformations, and we can meet and expand our commitment to farmers and ranchers as they work to feed the world. And I look forward to working with the committee to support this mission. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. First of all, let me just say, we all know that our farmers are facing unprecedented challenges. I mean, we have the climate crisis right in our face. We have market volatility. We have emerging diseases that you were talking about, supply chain disruptions. I mean, there's so much coming at our farmers and ranchers. And the research that's done at USDA and the data that's collected is really critical. So when we look at the next Farm Bill, how can we strengthen the USDA's research extension education programs to better meet the challenges that farmers and ranchers are facing? And let me just say, when you talk about the numbers and how our investments have gone down and other countries are going up, that's something we should all be very concerned about as we look at our future. But talk more specifically about what we should be doing to strengthen these efforts.
Thank you, Chairwoman Stabenow, for that question. We've talked about investments in ag research. And we know that there are some countries like Brazil who are competitors, global competitors. And so we take an opportunity, we lose an opportunity to be competitive if we continue in this trajectory. The second topic I'd like to focus on is ag infrastructure. When we think about the workforce that we have across the country, both internal to USDA and the Ag Research Service and with our land-grant university partners, we know that many of the scientists that support our industry are working in crumbling facilities. In USDA Agriculture Research Service, which I have the most latest experience with, the average age of our buildings is 47 years old. And so in order to attract the best and the brightest, which is my third point, our next generation of agricultural professionals is critical. Today, in REE, 20% of our workforce are eligible to retire. In 3 years, that becomes 33%. That's 1/3 of our workforce is eligible to retire. And so it's been very helpful to have unprecedented investments in the next generation of agricultural professionals. President Biden and Secretary Vilsack recently announced the Next Gen program, From Learning to Leading, which is an unprecedented $250 million investment in encouraging and attracting students from underrepresented communities to the agricultural profession. And so the flexibility that gives us, the infrastructure that we need for our best and the brightest, and investments in ag research are things that I know that this committee also believes in very strongly.
Great, thank you very much. I mentioned in my opening that we've secured $185 million in the last Farm Bill for the Foundation for Food and Agricultural Research, or FAR as we call it. This is actually something that Senator Roberts and I originally created in the 2014 Farm Bill as a public-private effort as we do public-private research in healthcare. We have not done that in the past on agriculture. So this foundation has been doing that, and appreciate 341 grants to date, and including a really important one that Michigan State did on pest management for our cherry growers. But could you talk a little bit more about how FAR's unique model of leveraging public and private funds is something that is helpful in this arena?
Yes, so I've been a part of FAR. I've been an ex officio board member since the inception. I was fortunate enough to call some of the original members who served on the board. Remember the spreadsheets of all the names that had been suggested for the board. And so I've been working very closely with the organization over the past couple of years. And as undersecretary, working to partner with FAR whenever possible to benefit on their convening power, their opportunities to bridge the gap between public and private organizations. And so working with the new director, Dr. Sahara Moon, and just really continuing to bring strength to strength from our two organizations.
Thank you. And just quickly in closing, we've now been re-emphasizing or strengthening the focus on urban agriculture, which is creating jobs in our urban areas and a wonderful bridge between urban and rural. And we have a new office, as you know, set up and so on. I wonder if you might speak a little bit about how we could improve the ability to support our urban producers and develop innovative technology for local food systems.
Yes, so absolutely. One of the things that I'm very excited about is our recent announcement about beginning Farmers and Ranchers Development Program. And looking at the array of the 45 projects, they span the spectrum because urban agriculture is agriculture. And so really trying to encourage more people to enter into that profession. There's a project that encourages farmers in aquaculture, for example. And so using our community technical assistant partners to really reach out to some of those communities to help them enter into areas like urban agriculture.
Thank you very much. Senator Boozman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Dr. Jacobs-Young, thank you again for being here. I continue to hear really good things about the work that you're doing, and we are grateful for your service. I understand you recently met with a group of rice researchers from Arkansas. I appreciate you taking that meeting, and I think that they felt like it was very productive, and we appreciate you listening to their concerns. The 2018 Farm Bill established the Agriculture Advanced Research and Development Authority. Though the authority itself will be revisited in Farm Bill discussions, the program has vast support across the stakeholder community. The last appropriations bill provided startup funding for staff hires and a mandate to complete a strategic plan. Can you tell us the status of how that's going and talk about when you plan to submit the strategic plan to Congress?
Senator Boozman, thank you for that question. This is a very complex topic. And just, to be clear, the opportunity to fund high-risk transformative research is something that we're all very, very excited about. In fact, as ARS administrator for 8 years, we've been trying to integrate innovation into the DNA of who we are. And so we're very excited about this concept to follow in the footsteps of some of our federal partners like the DARPA organization. And on the other hand, we recognize that DARPA has a budget of $3.85 billion. And so to be truly impactful, we recognize we need the resources to scale the types of projects that we all envision would happen with ARGARDA. With the $1 million, we have partnered with FAR. And we are engaging on a series of formal conversations. We've received a lot of feedback from stakeholders. We're going to engage in formal conversations to get their feedback on the direction for ARGARDA when properly resourced. We have a plan in clearance. I just want to be transparent. It is an implementation plan on what is possible if ARGARDA is funded at the authorized $50 million level. And we expect to release that plan to you all and publicly in the first quarter of next year.
Good. Well, certainly that would be, very helpful. You have to have a plan before you can get implemented. You need to be nice to this guy, the ranking member on ag appropriations, as we go forward. Following today's hearing, myself and the chairwoman are eager to begin our work to develop the research title for the next Farm Bill. Dr. Jacobs-Young, in your role as Undersecretary, will you commit to provide the committee with the technical assistance when asked and to prioritize the effective implementation of programs authorized by the next Farm Bill?
We would be so happy to do so. We are on standby and ready for your call.
Very good. You can't ask for anything more than that. That's great. Can you just speak again very quickly about the importance of the research, USDA research in developing new tools? And how are you, as the Undersecretary, furthering the goals of trying to get more tools in the toolbox?
Right, absolutely. And so when we think about what we heard when we engaged with stakeholders, they need more technical assistance, they need more boots on the ground, and they need more data. And what we found is that when we partner with technical cooperators, when we partner with Extension Service, those people who are on the ground every day, the point of our research is not to stay in the file cabinets. It's to get it out into the hands of the people that need it. And so we've been partnering with a number of the programs that have been put in place at USDA to disseminate the information. For example, the climate hubs, which were created to take the thousands of peer-reviewed papers we do a year on climate science. That's just in USDA. But a producer, he or she can't stand in their field and read our papers, as grand as they are. And so we implemented the climate hubs to take that information, to translate it into nuggets that producers can use, and more importantly, bringing producers in at the beginning of some of our research projects. So I think it's just very, very important that we continue to up our game in terms of working hand in hand with the producers and meeting them where they are.
Good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Senator Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Ranking Member, and thank you very much, Undersecretary, for joining us today. I want to talk a little bit about research into food. So the USDA research into food for humans centers on safety, but also on strategies for increasing productivity and sustainability and quality, and that's really important. And the USDA has also started to advance some educational programs and resources promoting indigenous food sovereignty, which I think is very important, and I appreciate your attention to that issue as well. One area of research that is very important, but I think gets less attention, is NIFA's support for research and education to help Americans make informed food choices. On NIFA's website, there are a variety of initiatives, including programs to help folks make good choices about food, resources to help individuals living with diabetes make good nutritional choices, those kinds of strategies. And so these initiatives go directly to the relationship between food and health and touch on how improved nutrition is one of the most powerful tools we have to improve health outcomes, especially for chronic health conditions that are so harmful to people and also cost the United States billions of dollars in healthcare costs. So could you talk about what more we need to do in the Farm Bill to support USDA's research and education into healthy food and that connection between food and health?
Senator Smith, this is one of my passionate priorities as Undersecretary. I'm very, very committed to this topic. On yesterday, Secretary Vilsack and I both announced the ASCEND, which is the Agricultural Scientific Center of Excellence for Nutrition and Diet, in support of President Biden's Cancer Moonshot 2.0. In response to the White House Conference on Hunger and the strategies that we're working to meet, we recognize that in the United States, almost 60% of us deal with one chronic condition, at least one chronic condition. If I could probably raise my hand 3 or 4 times when we ask those questions. And we know that there are a lot of things outside of our control, especially when we deal with cancer, but food isn't one of them. And so we have the power to bring together the right people at the right time to talk about what needs to happen in order to translate once again, the research and the data into usable information for Americans to improve the quality of life and reduce their risk of chronic disease and cancer. And so we have initiatives called precision nutrition. Each one of us in this room belong to a subpopulation. And one size does not fit all of us. And so we want to be more targeted in the guidance we provide to Americans on how to eat for a healthy, high-quality life. I shared, and Secretary Vilsack shared on yesterday, that many of our family members have died before age 60. Mine before in 50, between 50 and 55. My sister just last year at age 50. We can do better. The pandemic elucidated for us how vulnerable we are when we carry these obesity-related chronic diseases like diabetes, hypertension, kidney disease, cardiovascular disease. So my answer is yes. We're all over it. We currently invest about $180 million in nutrition. And how do we bring that power with the American Heart Association, the cancer associations, with our producers, and so how can we use our convening power to bring people together to solve some of these problems?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate I can hear the strength of your passion for this, and I believe that this is such an important area for us, an area where there's a lot more work to do, and it is, as my good friend Senator Booker says, this is a civil rights issue.
Yeah.
And it is also an issue of how you save billions of dollars in healthcare costs, as while you are also simultaneously improving people's lives. I think this is a big opportunity for us as we think about resource allocation and prioritizing in the Farm Bill. I just have a minute left, and I want to ask you a similar question about the role that the USDA can play in research, understanding the impacts of market consolidation and concentration. Another area that I think affects the lives of farmers and ranchers and also consumers as we see increased consolidation. This committee has talked a lot about that. Do you see this as an area where we would benefit from additional research?
Absolutely. Currently, the Economic Research Service is right in the middle of all of these conversations about the impact of consolidation on American agriculture. And so it is the impetus behind a number of our initiatives that are trying to build local and regional approaches to many of the challenges that we face, because we recognize how vulnerable we are when we don't have a resilient food system. And so the consolidation is it's an issue, and we are working towards making sure that we, for example, increase meat and poultry processing at local and regional levels, being able to help those producers have economic opportunities and have a little bit more control over their vitality. And so, yes, absolutely. Economic Research Service is right in the middle of those conversations.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Important question. Senator Hoeven.
Thank you. Thank you, Undersecretary, for being here today, and thanks to both Chairman and Ranking Member for holding this hearing. Ag research is so incredibly important. Growing up in western North Dakota, I can remember there were just a few crops we could grow very well on dryland farming, and now the diversity in terms of the crop out there is amazing, and is a credit to ARS and to NIFA and the great research done not only at USDA but at our land-grant universities. It's just unbelievable in terms of productivity and disease resistance, and it continues. So this is such an important area, and one of the things that we're really pushing forward now with is precision agriculture. And we've started a concept at North Dakota State University. It's called Grand Farm, and it's actually a public-private partnership where they've actually set up a cooperative agreement with USDA, with ARS specifically, to do research on precision ag, and they've acquired land, and the theory actually is that they're going to have a fully automated farm. Now, self-propelled vehicles and the whole 9 yards. Now, it won't be, just like unmanned aircraft aren't unmanned, right? There's a pilot, he's just on the ground, not in the aircraft. But it involves all these things, and so first I want to invite you to come out and see it. Now, as Senator Smith will tell you, we have lovely winters in North Dakota and Minnesota. Great at Christmas time, white Christmas, but certainly you could come in the summer or spring if you would, but we'd love to invite you to come see it.
Well, I would share with you that I've been to North Dakota in the summer, and it was 104 degrees.
Yeah, that's true.
So I'm not sure what is the best time of year to go to North Dakota, Senator Hoeven. Absolutely. You know, ag is high tech. You know, when you talk to most Americans, they have no idea how high tech agriculture is. And once again, talking about infrastructure, those things are only possible if you have broadband access, if you have smart young people. I'm not saying that old folks can't do it, but a lot of young people who understand biology and computer systems and informatics who can come in and help us build AI systems, machine learning. And then we need traditional breeders who can breed plants that can be mechanically harvested. And so it's a full spectrum of needs. And so precision agriculture, once again, relies on data. You know, we can't do it without data. And so where do we store that data? How do we analyze it? So we also need high-tech IT infrastructure, looking at high-performance computing, looking at cloud storage, and once again, a cadre of people who know how to use those systems to be able to give us the answers we need. I would be more than happy to come and tour the site. I would love to be able to visit, to see it in action, especially since you're partnering with ARS.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, and these cooperative agreements are a great way to do more of what you just described, and I think you're right on there. The only thing I wouldn't agree with when you said us old people, if you were talking about me and Bozeman, us old people would apply. In your case, that doesn't apply at all. But then the other thing is, just for in the remaining time here, touch on, in terms of ARS and NIFA, how you see the two working together, coordinating, and as we go into this next farm bill, you know, what are your priorities, both for ARS and NIFA, and, you know, what do you see as the most effective thing we can do to enhance? I mean, I think they're already great programs,
right?
But how do we improve them in this next farm bill?
I think the opportunity to have those conversations about, like, how are things working, you know, what are some technical fixes, you know, all those things that we're poised to comment on. And then there's this opportunity. I think I'm one of the few people who've had an opportunity to work in both ARS and NIFA and actually head both agencies. There's only 2 agencies in REE I haven't been a member of, so I may do an internship in either NAS or ERS. So I have the benefit of seeing the high-level opportunities to connect more of the dots. And I think that what you've done in terms of your support for us is very important, and we need to work with you as we capitalize on those investments. Infrastructure, increased agriculture research investment, and the next generation of agriculture professionals.
Great. Again, thanks for your work. Really appreciate it, and for being here today.
Thanks very much. Senator Booker, who chairs our subcommittee who oversees research as well as nutrition. So,
thank you, and I'm happy to speak for the young people on this committee. Senator
as their elder,
Senator Grassley and I are the youngest of spirit here, I think. I just want that for the record.
I'm not going to live that down.
Undersecretary, I have one judgment real quickly. You clearly went to the second best North Carolina school, not North Carolina Central, which is my dad's university. So I assume you just couldn't get into North Carolina Central.
You got me there.
Okay, good. We have a crisis in American farming. It's really stunning. The number of small farmers that are losing their farms is dramatic. My colleague mentioned about the corporate concentration. I visited farmers in the Midwest, saw their deeds to the land from like 4 generations ago in the Homestead Act, and yet the economics just don't work for them like it did for those 4 generations previously. And so you're seeing these big market forces that are causing corporate concentration, causing a level of pain in the Midwest, in farm countries, rural areas. I mean, the suicide rate for independent family farmers is 3 times higher than Americans. This should be a national crisis. Yet we are doing things that are aiding and abetting the massive concentration of farms. And so I'm just wondering, from a research challenge, to begin to lay plain this generational shifting from independent family farmers to massive multinational corporations, and what the real effect is on our culture, on our society, and even for farm workers, consumers, and more. Is there something you can give me of hope that we're trying to do things that could lay plain the true cost of all this?
So most of our focus is on small to mid-sized farms. Most of our research, most of our programs are focused on small to mid-sized farms. And really, the Beginning Farmers and Ranchers Development Program that I mentioned, we just announced $24 million in a grants to technical operators on the ground, going to those farms, going to try to help them with technical assistance around land access, market planning, entrepreneurship, and how do we support those farmers. And just taking about 4 steps back, if those producers cannot make a living on those farms, if they cannot have rural communities where they can raise a family, where they can thrive, we're going to be in a world of hurt because I think it's about 2% or less of Americans are involved in growing the food that we eat. And so if we can't find a way to make those farmers successful and be vital, let's just say it's a high priority for us. And we're investing a lot of research and really trying to be able to respond to how do we reduce inputs? How do we increase the economic advantages?
Right.
How do we do things like value-added products?
And so, I agree. And so, as we look to the next Farm Bill, I hope we can really invest in research to provide those farmers with scale-appropriate innovations and the tools they need. And a related issue to this, to me, is the fact that we are not aligning our subsidies with the best return for the consumer because we're not taking into effect all the negative externalities towards what we're doing. Like, so for example, only 2% of our ag subsidies are going to the foods that other parts of government tell us we should eat the most of, fruits and vegetables. These are actually called specialty products, but yet most of our nutritionists are telling us that should be the core of our diets. But more than that, the kind of farming we're investing in has a tremendous amount of these negative externalities. This is not a reflection of true market forces because we are, as a government, interrupting. So these negative international substantial greenhouse gas emissions, pollutions of lakes and rivers and oceans as these chemicals are flowing into them, the depletion of our soil health, which is tragic in and of itself, but also fails to deal with flooding and is contributors to the flooding we see in a lot of our communities, as well as a failure to sequester carbon, a massive loss of biodiversity around our country. So these are the true costs that are not being incorporated into what we're doing, not to mention the fact that we are making incredibly cheap the foods that we are telling people not to eat. My kids in Newark walk into a corner grocery store and a Twinkie product is so much cheaper than an apple, because all of our billions of dollars of subsidies go to everything in the Twinkie product and nothing to healthy food. So then our taxpayers pay twice by paying for the Medicaid, Medicare cost, the explosion of diet-related diseases, because we, as a country, have decided we're going to make cheap and easy available foods, empty nutrition, and the like. And so I just think there should be research into the massive explosion of costs that are true cost to the foods we're eating and subsidizing, to the point now in America that 1 out of 3 of our government dollars is going to health care. And almost 1 out of 5 of our dollars in our entire economy is going to health care, and 80% of it is preventable diseases, most of which is related to the foods that we're subsidizing. And so that's the insanity that I think we're in. We're a frog in boiling water right now as a country, where if diabetes, strokes, heart disease, even what people call type 3 diabetes, which is Alzheimer's, keeps going up at the same rate. In the next 25 years, it won't be 1 out of 3 government dollars going to healthcare. It'll be 1 out of 2 government dollars. And so you could be the canary in the coal mine by screaming right now with the right research to expose, I think, more of the truth of how we are digging our own grave. And I'm not being metaphorical here, with the number of people that are dying based upon the way we've designed our food system. So could you comment on that? And I'm out of time, but if you would, just give me a quick note.
So, Senator Booker, you've dropped a lot there, and is it possible for me and my team to follow up with you, maybe sit down?
Yes, please. And with that, I'll surrender the time.
Thank you very much. Important questions.
Yes.
Senator Ernst.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as a proud Cyclone alum, I am going to attest that the best land-grant university actually comes from Ames, Iowa.
Oh.
So I think all of us have competing interests, but all working together in that same wonderful system. So Certainly, the research title of the Farm Bill enables a lot of really important relationships and partnerships with our land-grant universities to dig into that ag research, extension, and education. And there's a number of programs that I've supported here from the Senate: the Farm and Ranch Stress Assistance Network, the Agriculture Advanced Research and Development Authority, and, as you've mentioned many times over, the Beginning Farmer and Rancher Development Program. I really appreciate those programs and what they're doing for our Iowans and others across the country. And so, again, thank you, Dr. Jacobs-Young, for being here with us today and sharing your expertise. The ag sector has come under a lot of increasing cyber attacks. And this is threatening the livelihood of our farmers, and then in turn, of course, is threatening our nation's food chain. And of course, there are a number of us that we work to combat the increasing cybersecurity threats, and we do that especially as we look at our adversaries around the globe. But what role would you see for the university agricultural systems in this particular effort? And of course, thereby embedding research, education, and outreach activities into this. Again, very important topic and one that we haven't spent as much time on.
Thank you, Senator. And first raising the awareness about the need for ag cybersecurity. In the Agriculture Research Service, we do a lot of IP-related research, vaccine development, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're constantly protecting our systems from intrusion, which is interesting because ultimately our goal is to make all of it public, but when we're ready to make it public. I think that the need to raise awareness about the need for the cybersecurity, and then training a generation of professionals who can help us in this space. I think that that's going to be critically important. We're partnering with Iowa State University with our high-performance computing network. Our first node was built right there at the NADC on the Iowa State University campus, and so we're already partnering with Iowa State. And once again, training people who can help us, and I will add that we also retrain some of our existing employees. That we offer trainings all year to try to get people up to speed in areas like high-performance computing, AI, cybersecurity. And so I look forward to working with you, Senator Ernst. If there's something that we can do in partnership with your office, we're just happy to do that.
That is wonderful. And then are there other agencies that you work with as well in this area that could be good partners and relationships we should be developing?
So in agriculture, we have something called the 5 Eyes, which are the 5 international countries working with our intelligence communities. And so happy to share more about that.
Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that. And then as well, when you look at the research title and addressing the important issue of data-driven research around carbon, and that's something a few members have already brought up, what can be done to help our farmers and producers make the best decisions for their operations around the issue of carbon? Because I travel across the state of Iowa doing what is known as the full Grassley. We visit all 99 counties every single year, and a lot of our farmers have expressed interest and want to be engaged in whether it's carbon capture or other. But how can we get that information out to them?
So stressing the importance of having the producers engaged, right, from the beginning, early and often, communicating. So I don't know if I want to do the whole Grassley tour, but I think it's critically important to get out there. I've been on farms as well as talking to our producers about what is it they need and how can we deliver it in a way that it will be receptive, because adoption is part of the issue that we have. We develop wonderful technologies and innovations and tools, and then we struggle with adoption. I'm thinking about tools like GraceNet. It's one of the tools that a farmer can use to really look at their emissions from their cropped and grazed soils under current and future management practices. We have tools like Comet that we can look at reductions of and sequestration and conservation. And then we have like Dairy Gem. So we're taking a lot of this science and data, and what we want to be able to do, I want to pull out one or two of my cell phones, we want a producer, him or her, to be able to stand with their cell phone and be able to access the tool. They don't need to know what's working behind it. They just need to know how to put the proper variables in or get the answers that they seek. And so a full-time job is translating the science into digestible nuggets in a way that people can receive it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just so important that we take all of this incredible information, get it right out there to that end user. So thanks so much. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for holding this hearing. Madam Secretary, thank you very much for being here. In the 2018 Farm Bill, this committee authorized the Agriculture Advanced Research and Development Authority, or AGARDA. I was happy to hear the ranking member ask about this. There's bipartisan support for this pilot program, which was modeled after the success of ARPA-E at the Department of Energy and DARPA at the Department of Defense, meant to address the greatest threats to American agriculture through high-risk, high-reward research that drives innovation. You mentioned in your conversation with the ranking member that you're working on a strategic implementation plan, which is an important step, and I hope we can see that released as soon as possible. I was curious whether you'd made progress on hiring a director or staff to help launch the program itself, and aside from funding, what the biggest challenges are to implementing the program. Are there changes we need to think about in the upcoming Farm Bill to make it more effective or easier to implement or more relevant to the issues facing producers today?
So with the $1 million investment that we received in FY22, it's complicated to be able to support a federal employee with short-term funding. An employee we looked over at DARPA, ARPA-E, ARPA-H, and they were somewhere between GS-15s and senior executives. And so we're talking about $165,000 to $200,000 base salary without benefits. And so it would be difficult to make that type of commitment to a federal employee without, long-term committed resources. And so we partner with the Foundation for Food and Ag Research so that we didn't have to use the resources that we could use working with stakeholders and engagement to try to create a position inside of USDA. So working with the foundation that was created to support the department. And so that's the strategy that we've taken thus far. And once we have an opportunity to talk with the stakeholders about what they would love to see, then I think we have an opportunity to be able to see what's possible internal to the federal government.
Do you have a timeline for when you are trying to bring somebody aboard to?
Currently, there are no plans to bring a permanent federal employee aboard.
Okay.
We don't have the committed resources.
Okay, I'd like to follow up with your staff, if that's okay, to understand that better and make sure that what we were trying to achieve here is actually being carried out by the administration. So if we do that work with you,
yeah,
I'd appreciate that.
Senator Bennett, as I shared before, it's a matter of scale, and the scale is when you look at what the program was authorized at $50 million. And so being able to plan for a $50 million program is something that we're excited about. However, we have to have the resources.
Yeah. Okay. I'll follow up if that's okay.
Okay. Thank you.
And then the only other question I had for you is, I know you know that Colorado and the American West, for that matter, is being ravaged by wildfires. Mm-hmm. We've been able, with the leadership here, to be able to create an unprecedented commitment of billions of dollars to both in the infrastructure bill and in the Inflation Reduction Act to be able to begin to address the forests that have been neglected so badly by our federal government over so many years, but the effects of climate change have been just staggering. And I just wonder whether you've got some examples of ongoing research to support wildfire prevention and mitigation, and what role research can play in advancing our understanding of our ecosystem's vulnerability to fires, to extreme weather, and to other similar threats.
Thank you for your question, Senator Bennett. This is an example of where we play a supportive role to our federal partners, and that's the Forest Service research entity and our Foreign Service colleagues. I know that in ARS, we've done a lot of studies around things like sage grass and some of the other things that might be, an issue. We have looked at what do we do with, for example, smoke-tainted grapes. So how do we not lose that agricultural production? What are the options? And so really working with our Forest Service colleagues is an example of where we think we can come together there.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Senator Highsmith.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you for being here today. You've really presented yourself extremely well, very impressive. I want to talk about rural veterinary medicine. In Mississippi, we have a tremendous shortage, and across the country that threaten the long-term viability of our livestock industries. We have counties in Mississippi that don't even have a large animal veterinarian, and that's really what we're hearing across the entire country. And as you well know, our food security and economic security are put at risk without sufficient veterinary oversight to ensure the health of animals and the food supply chain and the proper federal inspection of meat, poultry, and catfish processing. The USDA, National Institute of Food and Agriculture, NIFA, currently administers the Veterinary Medicine Loan Repayment Program to alleviate rural veterinary shortages by providing money toward educational loans of veterinarians who agree to serve in rural shortage areas. There's just so much money to be made in small animals that it's difficult to lure them into large animals. But while many of these rural veterinarians serve in private practice, some undertake federal roles such as USDA Food Safety and Inspection Service inspectors. But despite the successes of this program, there are still critical shortages across rural America. One of the reasons for this that I think has been identified is that these awards from NIFA are subject to a federal withholding tax, meaning that 37% of the dollars appropriated to this program go right back to the Treasury. So instead of the educational debt for the rural veterinarians, without this tax, we could better address these shortage issues by helping more veterinarian practices where it is desperately needed. What are your views on the veterinary shortages, and how open are you to additional conversations on how we can get more veterinarians into rural America, and how will you ensure NIFA continues to successfully administer this program, and what do you think about alleviating those taxes?
So, Senator Highsmith, it's interesting because every young person I talk to who's interested in animal science, I literally beg and plead with them to look at large animals, and what I noticed when I toured the veterinary school at Mississippi State University, primarily female.
Yes,
primarily
over 50%.
Female vet students.
I've got one on my staff right here that just graduated.
Large animal veterinary. So how do we, so the incentives are great. Programs like the NIFA-led program are great. We've also recognized an imperative to diversify our veterinary programs. I talked with some of the students at President Nave's University at Alcorn. The students are interested in animal science and veterinary science. How do we encourage them and bridge the way for them to go into vet programs? So something that we talk about a lot in terms of planning on how we can use some of these unprecedented investments in the next generation of ag professionals to train targeted areas like veterinarians for rural communities, for large animal science. So I think that you're right, this is an important issue. I would love to have an opportunity to talk more, maybe hear some of your thoughts on what you've learned in your state. I've always been excited about the repayment program, the loan incentive program that NIFA led. Tried to get my daughter to go on veterinary services, but she fought against me because I thought, hey, we can send you to a rural area, you can get some of that paid back. But yeah, this is very important. ARS hires a lot of veterinarians. And I'll tell you where we've seen the most glaring shortage is as we move into our BSL-3 and BSL-4 facilities where we're dealing with diseases like African swine fever, classical swine fever, avian influenza, we need trained veterinarians, PhD, DVM PhDs who can help us in those spaces, and we have a shortage of those people. And then we have to compete with everybody else for the same students. And so I would love to have an opportunity to talk with you about that. Now, in terms of the withholding, I would need a whole lot more information on that piece, but I'm happy to talk with your office to see what's possible.
Well, thank you for your interest because it is a critical shortage and we are losing animals because we just have no one to come to the farm in time to save them. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I believe Senator Tuberville is next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for having this discussion today. My former employee was one of the big land-grant universities, earliest ever, Auburn University, and also in Alabama we have Tuskegee University and Alabama A&M. So thank you for your hard work and looking out for our land-grant universities. Farm Bill is very, very important to my state and really all the states and for all the people who live in this country. I'm real concerned about our family farms, as Senator Booker was talking about earlier. It's important we understand what they go through and the problems that they're having. You know, the average U.S. farmer is 58 years old. We have very few young people getting into it. And why would they do it when they can't make any money doing it? And we've got problems from fuel prices and the EPA looking over their shoulder and making it tougher every day. And things getting tougher, you know, doing away with fossil fuels. There's so much unknown that our farmers are getting ready to face. One thing I want to ask you about is the research. What are we doing through your department, through the ownership of our land to foreign countries? China, for instance, in the last 12 years has gone from 10,000 acres to 360,000 acres of farmland in our country that they're purchasing. I can understand why a lot of our farmers are selling out. In the South, we're selling out. Some of our farmers are selling out because of people moving to the South. You know, housing areas, home building, all those things, and they can make money doing it. But we have to save our family farms. But for some reason, we're selling more and more land to foreign entities. Are we doing any research into that?
That's a good question, sir. And I would love to follow up with the Economic Research Service and Office of the Chief Economist to determine if we do have some research in that space. I will share with you that we're doing everything in our power to be able to help those farmers and producers be successful on their land.
Right.
And so that's been a huge focus area for us in the research areas. We talked about the Beginning Farm and Rancher Development Program. You know, a large portion of our military come from rural communities. A number of them come back to the country and they're interested in farming and returning to the land. How do we help those people integrate back into the land, and what services can we provide to help them be successful? Investments in rural communities. How can we create communities where people want to live, where they can educate their children, where they can make a living? The Economic Research Service has shared with us that over 85% of farmers don't make their primary living on the farm. And so I can't imagine that, you know, we have a lot of work to do in this space to help those producers be economically viable.
Yeah, I know being an ag school at Auburn, we have a lot of interest in it, but we have interest in more things like vet school and things like that, other than actually getting into the farming business. And we have to do something about it. We're not going to need a farm bill if we don't. Again, we have foreign entities coming in. Bill Gates is the largest farmland owner in the country, hundreds of thousands of acres. He owns most of the warehousing seeds in the country. And for one person to do that, there's got to be some kind of reason, you know, for that happening. So I just hope that we would keep our farmers in our prayers, because some of my best friends are in farming and they're just about to get out of it. If we don't come up with some answers for the cost and the availability of being able to do things easier, finding people to work on our farms, which right now is just, it's tough. I know people that own dealerships in terms of selling farm equipment. The supply chain is bad and getting worse. So you got your hands full, and we're going to have our hands full putting this farm bill together to make sure our farmers are able to make it through the next few years, because I think the next few years are going to be telling of where our farmers go and where our farming ends up, whether it's going to be foreign land or whether it's going to be domestic farmers. So thanks for your help. Thanks for your work.
So I just want to quickly share, this is where innovation comes in. We have to be able to automate some of the processes. We have to do things like mechanical harvesting. We have to be able to reduce the inputs by finding alternatives. We just recently broke ground on a brand new facility on Auburn University campus for the ARS scientists. We're just very excited about some of the headway we're making in this space. We know how important research is to the region, and so we're just happy to be in partnership with Auburn and look forward to working with you.
Well, thank you. And the one thing that I'm very concerned about in that area of innovation is our farmers are wondering about the equipment they're going to be using. It's going to be EV equipment. We're going to be, right now they burn diesel, they burn gas, and in the future is going to be, everything's up in the air. The cost is going to even get higher, and we can't have our costs going up for our farmers. Their margins are very small as they are. So we have a lot of decisions to make for our family farms. Corporations will make it, but the family farms aren't going to make it unless we go out on a limb for them in the future to make it easier and more profitable for them. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. A lot of important, serious issues for us coming together to support farmers and ranchers and families. Senator Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Madam Secretary, nice to see you. I concur with my friend from Alabama. I though, would amend that the threat of foreign land ownership is real. The threat of consolidation and corporate ownership is every bit as real or greater. What's happened to farms in Ohio and Alabama and Indiana and Nebraska and Michigan and Arkansas. So I think we all know that. I appreciate what you said about innovation and what that discussion back and forth. There is from Henry Wallace, when you think about innovation in agriculture, you think from Henry Wallace to researchers at our land-grant universities have made American farmers the most productive in the world, roughly, and you know these numbers, Dr. Shavonda Jacobs, Dr. Jacobs-Young, the every dollar invested in ag research has a $20 return. Food security is national security, and agriculture research is foundational to that. China understands it. They've quintupled their public investment in research, investing roughly double what the U.S. does. In the U.S., as you know, public investment in ag research has remained flat for 5 years. The Trump administration showed no real interest in doing the kind of research we should be doing. So a couple of questions about that. I assume you're concerned about the U.S. lagging behind China and now as well Brazil when it comes to public investment in ag research?
I am.
Okay.
I am. I probably have said it ad nauseum this morning. I'm concerned about the level of investment when we look at being on par with our scientific colleagues here domestically and globally. When we look at some of the investments in ag research, if we were on par, so what we shared, what you already shared and what I shared, if we could do that with what we have, imagine what we could accomplish if we were on par with our scientific colleagues, both here in the U.S. and around.
And it means Dr. Jacobs-Young providing more multi-year mandatory funding, correct?
I will leave that to the decision of Congress, but happy to help with technical assistance and support.
I get it. Well said. Let me shift to the 1890s land grant system of historically black universities. 19 universities, as you know, including Central State University in my state, one of the first and one of the best. The last Farm Bill established a scholarship program for students at 1890 institutions who are pursuing careers in agriculture and food sciences. What impact has that had on the 1890s network's ability to attract students interested in career careers in food and ag sciences. What does it mean for workforce development in diversity in agriculture? If we're going to make the case that I know the chair wants to make and I want to make, and I think several around this table, I think in both parties want to make, we need to know how you assess so far the success we've had there from the last effort.
So I know that you're going to have a witness on the next panel, Dr. Naves, who is right there where the rubber meets the road and working with the students at the 1890 institutions. I'll tell you from my perspective as undersecretary and as past administrator, how important it is for those types of programs to help us get a diversity of students into our halls, into our laboratories. And when they have that type of support, it takes a stress off to be able to encourage them. So it's one thing to attract students to the programs. It's a whole different topic to retain. And I think that those scholarships, both the 1890 scholars, we look at the Thurgood Marshall scholars, the Haku scholars, our 1994 scholars, all those programs are critically important to supporting those students to be able to know what's possible. I'll just share just real quickly. I was with Dr. Nave and her colleagues on the Council of 1890 Presidents when my confirmation vote came in. It wasn't how I had planned it. I had planned to be at home with my family with the bubbly, just waiting. But I was in a hotel lobby.
So you pay attention. You pay attention to these confirmation votes when you're
I
going
watched
through?
them all. Let's just say.
And you could tell me the names of as all nominees. Anybody that voted no, you can tell me their names.
Yes,
Never
I
mind.
can. I was with Dr. Naves and her colleagues at the 1890 Council of Presidents, and we talked about what needs to happen for us to make sure that we can provide a successful trajectory for these students. And so I was on her campus talking to her 1890 scholars. I've been to Prairie View A&M. I've been to the Falcon Conference. That's the first American land grant consortium for our 1994s with our Native American students. They need to see what's possible. When I was at that hotel with Dr. Naves and their colleagues, there was a young man that walked up to me and he said, I heard you speak many years ago, several years ago, and I went on to get a PhD because I saw you. And, you know.
Because he knows you have one.
Because I've talked to them about what's possible. The same thing I'm doing at each one of these campuses and in the conferences I speak. Now, to be honest, I don't know where I met him before. I don't know what talk it was, what engagement it was. We don't often know what type of impact we're having on people. And so the 1890 Scholars Program and all the different scholars programs are important because they provide an entry into exposure. So when we can get those students into our laboratories, we provide them opportunities to get exposure to people doing things that they didn't even know was possible, then we will have success. How do we measure that in totality, I think, is your question. And that's something that we'll have to sit down and talk about.
Because my time's expired, and I'll be really quick here, Madam Chair. But retention is always harder than recruitment, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and we need to get serious about what we can do, what this committee can do in the Farm Bill and beyond on retention. But we will come back to you with more about that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes,
I could
absolutely.
talk about that all day.
No, this is so important, so important. Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Secretary, for being here today. I appreciate it. I love your comments. I love your enthusiasm. Madam Chairman, the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Vice Chancellor for the Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources recently delivered testimony as part of USDA NEFA's listening session on updating scientific priorities. I ask that Vice Chancellor Mike Boehm's testimony be given consideration and be included as part of the official hearing record. Without objection, Madam Chairman.
I'm so sorry. Senator Brown is going on about how great our witness is.
I know we all could. We all could.
He was echoing what you were just saying. So yes, without objection.
Thank you so much. Madam Secretary, a priority that we have previously discussed is my support for USDA's co-located ARS National Center for Resilience and Regenerative Precision Agriculture, the National Center at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I, along with Nebraska Congressional Delegation, recently sent you a letter underscoring the delegation's support for the National Center and our strong commitment to secure federal funding for this essential ARS research facility. Can you provide the committee with an update and thoughts on how the new National Center will serve as a critical regional hub for collaboration and to identify and address relevant scientific and research gaps across the USDA ARS landscape, please?
So what's been very exciting is as we've really emphasized the need for investments in infrastructure, the investments, Congress has been very generous to us. We've received over $1 billion in investments for ARS facilities. The beauty of that is we've been able to address 7 facilities, co-located facilities on land-grant university campuses. And we're in the early conversations, well, not so early, with the University of Nebraska, and we have plans for what we would do when properly resourced. I support that co-location. My scientists are excited about it. Ronnie Green, who is an alumni of the Agriculture Research Service, is excited about it. And we just look forward to continuing to work with our colleagues there in Nebraska to make it a reality.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you on that. Nebraska has a unique position just with our water resources that we have and the possibility there with innovation. I think the research would be extremely important for food and our water resource, so thank you. Our community colleges also play an important and increasingly growing role in agriculture education and workforce training. For example, at Northeast Community College in Norfolk, they have an associate's degree in precision agriculture to train students on how to use, interpret, and utilize precision agriculture technologies to improve production. Northeast is also part of a multi-state coalition of community colleges that provide education, training, and demonstrations to future farm producers. As part of this group of community colleges, Northeast also has an MOU with USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service to provide training and education on conservation. Can you discuss the ways that USDA could better partner with community colleges? Specifically, do you see a role for community colleges like Northeast to help translate research into technical training to help implement in that field?
I do. I see a huge role for community colleges. I recently attended the FFA convention for the first time ever. I don't know if anybody in this room has ever been to an FFA conference.
Yes, ma'am.
67,000 kids and a lot of blue corduroy jackets. What I noticed when I walked through the exhibits is the prevalence of community and technical colleges. And it's the first time I had seen such a huge presence. And, you know, focusing on technical skills like welding, you know, and in fact, the first vice president, the second vice president for FFA is a welding student, and his goal is to open a welding business. So I recognize the importance of community colleges. We are partnering with the community and technical schools for meat and poultry processing, for example. So if we want to build local and regional systems, we need to have local and regional trained employees. And so it's been a right partnership for the community and technical colleges. Every profession in agriculture doesn't require a 4-year degree. And so we really want to make sure that we're capitalized on the strength of all of the institutions that serve us.
Well, I'd love to host you at the University of Nebraska, but I'd also like to get you a couple hours away from Lincoln to Northeast Community College and see the really fabulous things they're doing there with precision agriculture. It is a very exciting time, and it's a growing program for them that reaches out into rural areas of the state and the students that they're able to connect with there and keep agriculture strong.
I would love to do that. Remember, not in the winter.
No. I'm well aware of the charms. I'm well aware of the charms of our state, and I want you to have an enjoyable time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. I should also tell you, as someone who's been to multiple FFA state conferences, I love FFA and 4-H, and I've lobbied for years that in the summer, the young people need to have T-shirts, not navy blue
Oh my
corduroy
gosh,
jackets.
yeah.
So just another word for that. So,
Like, this is hot.
yes, exactly. Senator Braun.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, Madam Secretary. By the way, that FFA get-together happens in the great city of Indianapolis each year.
It does.
And when those kids come to town, it's the most peaceful get-together of a lot of folks in one place.
Yeah.
And those blue jackets are all over the place.
Yeah.
I was there this summer. So when I came here 4 years ago, I always try to look ahead. Ran a company for 37 years, and if you didn't have a good business plan for the future, you were always going to end up in a cul-de-sac sooner or later. I'd be remiss. I sit on the budget and appropriations committees, and everything we're talking about here today is in peril in the long run if we don't get back to budgeting and appropriations that are done the old-fashioned way, where you go through regular order, where you actually use a budget committee. That should be the most important committee in the U.S. Senate. It's almost kind of attenuating into a useless appendage, and I think that puts in peril on health, education, labor, and pensions. All the people that come there to make sure there's going to be R&D there for whatever you're interested in. You don't do that by running now $1.5 trillion deficits. And we've kind of just woven that into the landscape of how this place works. I don't want to depress the discussion here, but it's a reality we've got to confront. And until we get that back into place, which is not that difficult, a little bit of political will, a little bit of discipline, some of the things we're talking about here today for farmers, or for all the folks that are wrestling with hard-to-cure diseases are in that same peril, because the federal government should be the place where you could always go. We should be investing more in that stuff, and to do that, we got to be spending less on some of the things that, create these chronic now annual deficits. Earlier it was mentioned the difficulty of the hardest occupation I think God created, farming. It's the ultimate small business. Most are still small business enterprises, fraught with financial risk. I got started back when the farm crisis hit us nearly 40 years ago, and I remember what that was about. That was about the biggest change in farming that we'd ever seen in modern times. 160-acre farmers had to all of a sudden become 1,000-acre farmers. Now, that's a small enterprise. And the profit margin, in an absolute sense, has not changed much, from what it was then, and you got all that financial risk. So really what we do in terms of making it easier for farmers is so important, and Senator Tuberville drilled in on that. I come from a state that's got one of the heaviest concentrations in the poultry industry. I think we lead in ducks. Okay. We are really large in the turkey, grow out business. I'm from one of the two counties in the southern part of the state where there's a lot of activity, and they've recently had to contend with that added uncertainty of the highly pathogenic avian influenza. And when that hits, it is basically very few options. You're depopulating farms. You sometimes have to keep them depopulated for a long time. I work closely with APHIS and our other state agencies to ensure that Hoosier producers are receiving that kind of support, but I can tell you there's a lot of uncertainty on what is happening, and I want to just hear it from you that not only for poultry, I think the hog industry's got other issues. We got the chronic wasting disease on our borders that impact the recreational side of things. What's the USDA doing? How high a priority is it? Can I tell Hoosier poultry farmers back home that we are going to be putting more resources into something that when it hits us, it's devastating?
Emergency preparedness is something that is always top of mind. And as we look at foreign animal diseases and we look at high-path avian influenza, our partnership with APHIS is top-notch. Surveillance is important, diagnostics, ARS is often brought in to do the diagnostics and to help whatever mitigation program in place. Avian influenza vaccines are being developed in Athens, Georgia. We just cut the ribbon on a brand new $158 million facility, BSL-3 facility, where we do all of our avian research. And so we can only be prepared because we have that capacity. And so working with APHIS and working with our state and local leaders, we want to be able to come in and be very, very responsive in terms of mitigating the impact. We can't control the pests and diseases, unfortunately, because they don't respect boundaries. But we can be prepared when we're faced with it.
And I think as we become more global in nature, it's going to be important that we pour more resources to it, and again, do it in the context of trying to reform some things on a broader scale. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I believe we have concluded our first panel. Thank you so much. We very much appreciate all of your wonderful work and look forward to continuing to work with you as we move forward on this important title and others as well. So thank you so much. We'll now move to our second panel, and we'll ask our witnesses to come forward as Undersecretary Jacobs-Young is leaving. Thank you again. We'll ask all of our witnesses to come forward and begin the second panel. We appreciate all of you coming. As usual, members are trying to be multiple places at once, so we expect members to come back and join us during our second panel. Welcome. Good to have you. Terrific. Well, let me welcome everyone, and I want to start by introducing Dr. Roundtree. Dr. Jason Roundtree is a professor of animal science at Michigan State University, where he holds the Charles Stewart Mott Distinguished Professorship for Sustainable Agriculture. Dr. Roundtree has led or been a co-investigator on almost $28 million in funding, conducting much of his work at Lake City Ag Bio Research Center and the Upper Peninsula Research and Extension Center. In his work, Dr. Roundtree engaged directly with farmers to support ecological improvements in grazing systems. And so I want to thank you, Dr. Roundtree, for being here. And as a twice alum from Michigan State, I would say, go green. All right, there we go. We got it down. That's great. Let me also say our next witness is Dr. Felicia Nave, who has already been introduced by Senator Hyde-Smith. And just as a reminder, Dr. Nave serves as the president of Alcorn State University in Lorman, Mississippi, and the nation's oldest public historically black land-grant university. We're so pleased to have you with us. I'll next recognize Senator Braun, who will introduce our third witness.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next witness, Dr. Katie Martin Rainey, an associate professor of agronomy at Purdue University's College of Agriculture in West Lafayette, Indiana. Dr. Rainey earned her bachelor's degree from the University of Georgia and her doctorate from Cornell University. She's been a soybean breeder since 2006, starting at Virginia Tech before moving to Purdue. Dr. Rainey is a recipient of the Purdue Faculty Scholar Award and director of the Purdue Soybean Center and a co-founder of Progeny Drone, Inc. She serves on the National Genetic Resources and Advisory Council, the Foundation for Food and Agricultural Research, Crops of the Future Advisory Council, and is involved with the leadership of the National Association of Plant Breeders. Dr. Rainey has received millions of dollars in funding from soybean farmers and has taught plant breeding and genetics to over 850 students.
Thank you very much. Welcome. I'll turn now to Senator Bennett for our next introduction.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Ranking Member Bozeman. It is a great privilege to introduce a fellow Coloradan, Steve Ela, as one of our witnesses this morning. Mr. Ela is a fourth-generation grower. He manages Ela Family Farms extremely well, by the way, and Silver Spruce Orchards as well, a 100-acre organic family farm in Hotchkiss, Colorado, that grows cherries, peaches, plums, pears, apples, and tomatoes. In 1994, Steve began the transition to organic, and today his farm is 100% certified organic. Steve not only brings the committee his experience as a farmer and as a business person, but as a leader in agriculture policy. Steve graduated with a degree in biology and environmental geology from Beloit College and a master's in soil science with a minor in water resources from the University of Minnesota. He served on the National Organic Standards Board, including as president. He served with the Organic Farming Research Foundation, the Orchard Pest and Disease Management Conference, the Western Colorado Horticultural Society, and the Colorado Agricultural Commission. His family's farm also partners with Colorado State University to conduct on-farm research projects. Mr. Ela commands a firm understanding of organic standards in the organic food industry, rooted in years of experience running a farm and working in farm policy. I am extremely grateful to him for making the trip to Washington to share his experience with the committee as we consider the 2023 Farm Bill. And thank you again, Mr. Ela, for your testimony. And I think I could speak for Steve to say to you and Madam Chair and the Ranking Member that you are invited to the North Fork Valley at any time to see an incredible, thriving, entrepreneurial, agricultural culture that has built a diverse and strong economy over the last 20 years. Steve Ela has been a huge part of that. So thank you.
Wonderful. We'll take you up on it. When you were listing everything that he grows, I was getting hungry. So thank you so much. Welcome. And last but certainly not least, I will turn to Senator Bozeman for our final witness.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And our final witness is Dr. D.Q. Fields. Dr. Fields is Vice President for Agriculture at the University of Arkansas, a position he was appointed to in July of this year. Dr. Fields has provided extraordinary leadership for Arkansas agriculture. As Vice President, he is responsible for leading the university system's coordinated agricultural program, including the Cooperative Extension Service and the Agricultural Experiment Station. Dr. Fields has vast experience at several universities, which gives him unique insight on how to support research, teaching, and extension work. Prior to his current role, Dr. Fields served as Dean for the Dale Bumpers College of Agricultural, Food, and Life Sciences at the University of Arkansas. For several years, he was faculty member at Auburn University. He received his bachelor's degree from Southern University at Baton Rouge, Louisiana, his master's from the University of Missouri at Columbia, and a PhD from Louisiana State University, all in agricultural economics. He's married to Dana Fields, and they have 3 sons. Dr. Fields, thank you for your time and for being here today and the excellent job that you're doing, not only at the University of Arkansas, but throughout the entire educational system. I yield back.
Thank you very much. Well, we have a distinguished panel, and we'll ask each of you for 5 minutes of testimony. We welcome any other written materials that you'd like to give to the committee. And we'll start with Dr. Roundtree.
Chairwoman Stabenow, for your work and for the opportunity to testify about. Chairwoman Stabenow, Ranking Member Bozeman, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for your work and the opportunity to testify about the importance of cooperative extension and agriculture research funding. My name is Jason Roundtree, and I serve as the CS Mott Chair of Sustainable Agriculture and the co-director for the Center of Regenerative Agriculture at Michigan State University. My research relies heavily on federal agriculture research funding. In fact, I've led or been a co-investigator on research encompassing more than $27 million from the USDA Sustainable Agriculture Research and Extension Program, SARE, USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture, NIFA, and the Foundation for the Future of Agriculture, FFAR. Most recently, I pioneered a $19.2 million FFAR soil health grant entitled Metrics, Management, and Monitoring, an investigation of pasture and rangeland soil health and its drivers. The United States has the most efficient agriculture system globally. Technological advancements and intensification have enabled greater crop yields and improved animal productivity. However, these intensive practices have come with environmental costs, such as greenhouse gas emissions, water contamination, and the erosion of our most prized agricultural resource, soil. Soil losses endanger agricultural resilience by increasing drought vulnerability, reducing productivity, and releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. These challenges, coupled with global unrest and a growing population, places immense pressure on our agricultural resilience. Today, now more than ever before, domestic food security is inseparable from national security, and our national security hinges on our long-term climate security. Investing in extension and agriculture research is a powerful and straightforward way to ensure we develop innovative solutions to these challenges. Further, we must envision holistic solutions that are well-suited to address the complexity of agriculture. In my experience, the philosophy of regenerative agriculture is well-suited to this challenge. At the MSU Center for Regenerative Agriculture, we define regenerative agriculture along NRCS's 5 soil health principles. That's keeping soils continuously covered, minimizing soil disturbance, increasing biological diversity, keeping living roots in the soil, and integrating livestock. While implementation varies by farm, practices aligned with these principles are associated with promising soil health and carbon sequestration outcomes, and they're doing this while reducing inputs and not sacrificing profitability. Importantly, this movement is farmer and rancher-led. Just this week, I watched a YouTube video of a farmer who's growing 200 bushel corn in western Kansas with no nitrogen or phosphorus application. To me, this is the growing culture of agriculture. As these producers experiment and learn from one another, there's a need for extension to help troubleshoot, educate, empower, and facilitate. Supporting and expanding extension in this way is crucial to the success of regenerative agriculture as a climate solution. Experimental and on-farm research is equally important to this mission. Participatory research where academics connect with on-ground producers is essential. The USDA SARE program is well suited to this mission. However, there's a large gap between the demand for these projects and available funding. In my experience, only about 10% of farmer and academic-led sustainability grants are successfully funded, while half of these submissions were worthy of funding. Expanding participatory research impact is also feasible for USDA NIFA and FFAR. Lastly, with the advent of natural capital markets such as soil carbon offsets, research is desperately needed to facilitate the accurate and efficient quantification of ecosystem services. The National Capital Project at Stanford University indicate that the first law of a successful natural capital market is that the transaction must yield the desired effect. Essentially, when a company purchases a CO2 offset, there must be proof that the offset is grounded in real soil carbon sequestration. A handshake doesn't count. This requires rigor, accuracy, and robust accounting protocols that help us do things like avoid double counting. In the landmark document, A National Strategic Narrative, 3 core components were emphasized for future national security: land, energy, and water. In the face of a changing climate, nothing could be truer today. With the known challenges to agriculture's future, the question that must be posed, and especially thinking of our younger generations, is what level of food security risk do we assume by not acting? The easy bet is that continued and increased investment in extension and research will work to ensure we regenerate our food production system, mitigate climate risk, and enhance national security for future generations. Thank you again for the opportunity to address the committee, and I look forward to any questions.
Thank you so much. Dr. Nave, welcome.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairwoman Stabenow, Ranking Member Bozeman, and members of the committee for inviting me to participate in today's hearing. I am Felicia M. Nave, and I have the privilege of serving as the 20th president of Alcorn State University, which is located in Lorman, Mississippi. I also serve on the executive committee of the 1890 Council of Presidents, and I am honored to speak to you today representing the 1890 University community. On behalf of the 1890 Council, which is comprised of 19 presidents and chancellors, I thank you for your past support and for your future commitment to the growth and expansion of the 1890 land grant system, a commitment that furthers the educational attainment, economic prosperity, and health of families, businesses, and communities that our institutions serve. The impact of our universities is significant, and positive outcomes for the communities we serve and the nation are even greater. As a point of personal privilege, I want to share a little background about Alcorn State University. Founded in 1871, Alcorn traces its heritage back to both the 1862 and the 1890 Morrill Acts. Alcorn is unique among the 1890 institutions because it is the only HBCU founded with a land-grant purpose after the first Morrill Act, making it America's oldest public historically black land-grant institution. The 2023 Farm Bill presents an excellent opportunity to build on key gains for the 1890s that were included in the 2018 Farm Bill. It is also an opportunity to increase the financial support in critical growth areas, scale initiatives that have proven to be effective and successful, and address other areas of significance to the 1890 community. In my written testimony I submitted for the record, I outlined several key areas that we would like to work with Congress and the members of the committee on in the reauthorization of the 2023 Farm Bill. Our work at the Socially Disadvantaged Farmers and Ranchers Policy Center, which was authorized in the 2014 Farm Bill, is an example of the important work of taking a policy idea and turning it into actionable items for the success of socially disadvantaged ranchers and farmers. As you know, the 2018 Farm Bill included key investments in student scholarships and centers of excellence at the 1890s. Our universities are very grateful for the funding provided to support scholarships for students interested in pursuing careers in agriculture and agriculture-related fields. The new scholarship program is working. We are recruiting and preparing a diverse and talented new generations of agriculturalists and food scientists. Your continued support for the permanent expansion of the scholarship program will have a significant impact for our students, their families, and the long-term benefit of the country. The funding that was provided in the 2018 Farm Bill to establish the 6 centers of excellence supports innovative research and programming at our institutions. However, it is imperative that funding is included in the 2023 Farm Bill to stand up a center at each university as it drives our ability to remain competitive and contribute to the research vital to the communities that we serve. Our 1890 Congress also included in the 2018 Farm Bill a reporting requirement that states share the USDA the one-to-one funding match requirement for research and extension they are supposed to meet. Although Mississippi meets its match, unfortunately, several states are still falling short of its requirement, and the resulting nearly $30 million of underfunding in just the last 3 years continues to undermine the federal investments that Congress is making available to our institutions. There is a great need for an increased investment to grow the footprint and outreach of the extension agents at the 1890s. The agents are embedded in our communities and serve as the boots on the ground. With more resources, our agents will be able to serve more in our communities. As you know, our 19 universities are mainly in the rural areas of our states. We train our students for jobs and careers, and many of them have to leave our communities to secure employment in their respective field. As we look to the 2023 Farm Bill, the 1890 universities would like to work with Congress and this committee to find ways through the USDA rural development agencies to bring economic development opportunities to the surrounding areas of our school. The goal would be to create meaningful job prospects for our students to consider working and living in the communities that we serve. Lastly, for our institutions to remain competitive in emerging areas, increased funding is required to support the modernization and expansion of our research and technology infrastructure and to build capacity. Congress has realized its critical importance with the recent passage of the CHIPS Act. We want to partner in these efforts, and the work of this committee and the resources provided in the Farm Bill can help make that a reality. I am grateful for this opportunity to address the committee on behalf of the dedicated faculty, staff, and students at Alcorn State University and throughout the 1890 university system. I thank you for your continuous support of our institutions in agriculture.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Nave. Dr. Rainey.
Good morning, Chairwoman Stabenow, Ranking Member Bozeman, and members of the committee. I am Dr. Katie Martin-Rainey, Associate Professor of Agronomy at Purdue University. I am pleased to offer testimony on behalf of the American Seed Trade Association. Breeding and distributing the best seeds and other stocks is integral to U.S. farm productivity and food security and requires substantial investments in R&D. A critical element of crop improvement research is public-private partnerships. Thank you for shining a light on the importance of agriculture research. Now more than ever, U.S. agricultural production is faced with an array of emerging threats like extreme weather and new pests, combined with needs to provide enhanced ecosystem services such as improving water quality. U.S. seed companies, public and private scientists, and U.S. producers will continue to innovate to improve crops and production practices thanks to cutting-edge research. Strong investments in research means better outcomes for our farmers, our consumers, our land, and our environment. I'd like to offer a few examples highlighting the value of public-led plant research. I leverage economically valuable crop breeding research to also advance digital agriculture capacity for remote crop growth estimation, known as phenomics, and I launched a successful software company in this space. Because of my federally funded training in entrepreneurism, I am seeking to extend my technology to facilitate effective on-farm research. A USDA geneticist at the Plant Genetics Research Unit in Columbia, Missouri, discovered soybean mutants that produce healthier oil and then collaborated with the University of Missouri soybean breeder to develop new varieties with funding from commodity organizations, the USDA, and the university. Lettuce is one of the most widely consumed vegetables in the U.S. Scientists at UC Davis and ARS are collaborating to develop and release germplasm for the private sector with critical resistance to diseases. It's the truth that every bite of lettuce contains USDA genetics. And thanks to private and public sector R&D investments over time, gene editing is one of the most promising areas of crop improvement research. For instance, non-browning varieties of fruits and vegetables like potatoes, avocados, lettuce, and apples could significantly reduce food waste. We rely on the support of the Farm Bill funding and programs to ensure continued U.S. leadership as the provider of the best seed to the world. ASTA worked closely with Congress to mandate the development of a strategic germplasm and cultivar collections assessment and utilization plan for the National Plant Germplasm System. We look forward to its publication, which establishes a roadmap for the sustainability of MPGS for years to come. ARS capitalizes on long-term investments for high-impact payoffs. Its management of vast collections of genetic resources can't be done by an individual university or company. The Germplasm Enhancement of Maize project is a great example of utilization of the MPGS. That project identifies useful genetic diversity in exotic germplasm for commercial use in developing U.S. corn hybrids. Another key initiative is land grant capacity funds through the Farm Bill, which allow land-grant universities like Purdue to invest in infrastructure and people for cutting-edge research and extension that directly impacts farmers. Consider as well that land grants are critical to agriculture through our role in STEM education. About 59,000 U.S. graduates with agricultural expertise are needed per year, and land-grant universities educate this workforce. Nonetheless, we face unprecedented infrastructure challenges. U.S. scientists and educators are asked to perform 21st century science in facilities constructed in the 1950s and 60s. And this negatively impacts recruitment of the best and most diverse talent to study critical topics in food security. Robust support is needed via the Research Facilities Act in this Farm Bill. The National Institute of Food and Agriculture's Competitive Grants Program funds extramural research, education, and extension projects. We are encouraged that AFRI received funding increases in recent congressional appropriation cycles, but it continues to be funded significantly below its authorized level. Similarly, the Foundation for Food and Agricultural Research is the primary entity promoting public-private partnerships in this space by leveraging federal funding to bring private sector investments and knowledge to public scientists. With an average matching rate of $1.40, FAR is on track to invest nearly $1 billion. There is a misconception that the private sector has the basic and applied research needs for row crops covered. Private investments in row crops deserve corresponding investments in public investment because these crops, such as soybean, are so economically valuable and critical to national security. The Economic Research Service and National Agricultural Statistics Service provide foundational data in socioeconomics and statistical insights that are critical for all stakeholders. The tools and services provided by these agencies inform the decisions of seed companies and the rest of the private sector, as well as scientists, producers, and policymakers. For instance, producers across the country seek to adopt conservation practices, such as using cover crops to improve soil health. Information on acres and types of cover crops planted would help producers and the seed industry ensure the availability of high-quality cover crop varieties at the right place and the right time. The Agriculture Advanced Research and Development Authority, or AGARDA, was established in the last Farm Bill to support transformative advances that industry by itself is not likely to undertake because of financial uncertainty. One great area of potential within AGARDA is to promote agricultural resiliency with data. A reauthorized and robustly funded AGARDA would position USDA to lead agricultural data stakeholders in the implementation of badly needed data infrastructure. As we deal with ever-increasing challenges facing the future of our planet, all of these programs have unique roles, creating solutions for a more secure and sustainable future while keeping the U.S. competitive globally. Breeding high-quality, state-of-the-art seed will bolster practices for climate adaptation and mitigation and habitat restoration while also benefiting farm productivity. In summary, strong federal investments in agriculture research leveraged through public-private partnerships ensure the success of U.S. farmers and a sustainable global food production system. Thank you for the opportunity to provide remarks today, and thank you for your continued support for agriculture research programs.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ela, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for the privilege of being here. It's a true pleasure to be able to speak. So I'm going to start with the question that my grandfather would have asked in 1945. Do you substitute DDT for lead arsenate to control worms in apples? And that was the question of that day. So in 4 generations, we have grown fruit in pretty much every which way possible, using whichever different techniques. We have marketed every different way in 115 years. And so I'm going to return to that research question of what do we choose? Every day when I walk out of my door to my farm, I have to make choices. Crop load management, fertility, irrigation management, thinning, labor, economics. And I can make those choices based on research and knowledge and data, or I can guess, or I can put my finger in the wind, or I can use my experience or my intuition. But the more I can base that information and that knowledge and use that to make those decisions, the better grower I'm going to be. So, coming back, lead arsenate or DDT. That is the question my granddad had to answer. And the problem with that is we're talking about a substitution. We're talking about this or that. And as an organic grower, I've been conventional, I'm now organic, I have learned to get away from those single questions and get into systems. I want to ask, if I'm going to integrate into a system, how am I going to make decisions? So rather than saying DDT or lead arsenate, why wouldn't I ask, what cover crop would I plant? What cover crop would I plant that would have enhance the biodiversity of my farm, that would enhance the beneficial insects that will help control the aphids and the mites and the worms. At the same time, that cover crop could be providing fertility that I don't have to buy from off-farm because it could be fixing nitrogen from there, so it's not a supply chain issue. At the same time, that cover crop could be providing soil organic matter, which will enhance the water holding capacity of my soil, which will make my irrigation management easier. And at the same time, that cover crop could also be sequestering carbon and helping with our climate change. So I'm going to challenge you today, as we talk about research, is to change the paradigm of how we think from single inputs to multiple systems thinking. This is the new way we have to go, and it goes with regenerative agriculture, it goes with organic, it goes with conventional agriculture. And I'm going to say that that systems input is going to help solve multiple problems at once. We no longer have the time or the money to be able to solve each problem one by one. We need to think globally, and we need to think in terms of ecosystems. And that is the paradigm we need to go towards. And I'm also going to say that when we invest in that, in those organic systems and how the farm system works, we're not just benefiting organic growers, we're going to benefit all agricultural growers, conventional growers as well. Some of the projects that have been done, say in the 1990s with codling moth and worms, with pheromone mating disruption, they were pioneered on organic farms, and they are now used by nearly 80% of the conventional industry. If we want to talk about cover crops, which NRCS is pushing now, if we want to talk about regenerative agriculture, those are the mainstays that have always formed the foundations of organic agriculture. So those things are benefiting all of us, conventional organic growers as well. The final thing is we need to have organic research as part of all of our organic research programs. As a grower, we have conducted on-farm research with a number of universities. We've worked with Michigan, we've worked with Arkansas, we've worked with Colorado, we've worked with California, Oregon, and Washington. And we've worked programs like OREI, we've worked with SARE, we've worked with SCRI, we've worked with ARS, and we've worked with regional seeds and breeds programs. Each of those, having an organic component and increasing the funding, will help us change the paradigm of how we can work forward and use biological systems that will make us stronger. We're going to face unprecedented changes. We're facing climatic changes. We're facing more freezes, more rainfalls. We're facing invasive insects. We're facing higher input costs. And looking at these as a system where we can solve multiple problems with a system and not just one by one will make us a much stronger agricultural system. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you so much. Really important insights. Dr. Fields, welcome.
Thank you. Chairwoman Stabenow, Ranking Member Bozeman, and members of the committee, I'm grateful for the opportunity to testify on behalf of the entire land grant system. I'm also grateful for the significance this committee has placed on the research title of the next Farm Bill, as evidenced by this hearing. As Senator Bozeman mentioned, I've either been a student or a faculty member at 3 of the nation's premier 1862 land grant institutions and 2 premier 1890 land grants before coming to the University of Arkansas. So I consider myself a walking billboard for the power of the nation's land grant system to connect a young man from a small agrarian town in North Louisiana with the world. Through my various roles, I've witnessed the transformative strength of the land grant system, which marries vision with relevance. It's the foundational stone that undergirds public and private advances in research and innovation, trains our future, allows us robust resiliency in the face of continual and mounting challenges, and is the nucleus of the world's food security. Federal support for teaching, research, and extension has been critical for over a century and a half. Building on this noble legacy, I want to share some additional recommendations. Earlier this year, we talked about the Economic Research Service and that decline in public support for agricultural research. 70% of agricultural R&D is performed at land-grant universities and other non-federal entities. The global competitiveness of U.S. agricultural research is challenged as public investment declines disproportionately. Land grants have successfully integrated leveraged federal resources, provided and formed collaborative partnerships with other land grants, industry, state, and county government. Using Arkansas as an example, in 2022, the state appropriated funds accounted for 56.5%, and federal capacity funds accounted for 6.3% of the total University of Arkansas Division of Ag budget. From 2017 to 2022, the share of the federal capacity funding decreased by 2.8%, while extramural funding from grants increased by 2.1%, and county extension program funding increased by 1%. Industry grants account for about 45% of all extramural grant funding at the University of Arkansas. In Arkansas, USDA Ag Research Service units are either housed in or co-located with or supported by the UA system entities. This was seen as a necessary way to leverage ARS investment while benefiting the scope and reach of the UA system research. Over a 20-year period, beginning in 1990, the Division of Agriculture met regularly with national and regional ARS administrators to help ensure complementarity of our research activities. At every land grant institution in the country, our research infrastructure is degrading and literally crumbling in many instances. We can't try to do 21st century research in mid-20th century facilities, which was the last time a major investment was done in our research infrastructure. The University of Arkansas Division of Agriculture estimated deferred maintenance costs of nearly $100 million. Within the last 5 years, we've managed to bring 2 new facilities online. We have saved 13 years to be able to begin construction on 1 facility, forcing us to abandon sorely needed maintenance and renovation on existing facilities. On the other, we were forced to remain a substandard facility 15 years beyond its time to be raised before we could cobble together enough resources to replace it. Land grants are expected to be able to evaluate and showcase the latest technology, but in many cases, our agricultural producers have more modern technology than we do. One of the most impactful things our federal partners can do is invest in the infrastructure necessary for us to continue to do cutting-edge research, extension, and teaching programs. Reauthorizing funding for the Research Facilities Act will allow land-grant institutions to modernize and our research facilities and begin to address the $11.5 billion backlog of deferred maintenance nationally. Land-grant universities have proven their ability to bring world-class solutions to grassroots problems throughout the country. Our research discoveries have resulted in U.S. being able to have the safest, most efficient food system in the world. We must make bold moves to have infrastructure and technology necessary to improve efficiency, profitability, and health while protecting the environment in rural and urban communities. It is critical that agriculture research funding increase to remain a global leader and produce the technological advances necessary to meet the challenge of feeding the growing global population. Supporting agricultural research and infrastructure development is not a donation, but an investment in the future of national and international food security. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you to each of you for really important testimony. Let me start with Dr. Roundtree, and thank you again for being here. It's always great to see a fellow Spartan here at the table. Much of your career has focused on using extension to help farmers implement research on the ground to really improve resiliency of farms, as you talked about. In the next Farm Bill, how can we strengthen ag research and extension to help our farmers become more resilient to the impacts of the climate crisis?
Thank you, Senator Stabenow. Great question. I look back to when I first started in my career, and in Michigan, I believe we had like 6 to 7 beef specialists out in the state that were extension folks. And over time, that's dropped significantly. I can say the same about dairy and other things. And so I think having boots on the ground regionally is going to be highly important. I think simultaneously, as we do get more folks into the regions and out away from East Lansing and into the state, I think simultaneously education of those folks is key, right? I believe that we have the knowledge to mitigate climate. We have the knowledge to impact resilience. We always need more, obviously. But I think through the investment in these typically younger folks going out into these areas and investing in their education, their understanding of ecology, their understanding of technology will be highly vital. I think finally, just thinking through this from a standpoint of encouragement of funding that has been historic of merging extension and research, I think should absolutely continue. And most, in fact, of the researchers I work with today are getting more and more good with extension. And I think the auspice of even considering our extension folks as applied on-farm researchers that can be the hands and feet of said land grant are going to be important as well.
Great, thank you very much. Dr. Nave, I appreciate your joining us as well and for educating the next generation of our food and agricultural professionals, and the 1890s land grant institutions are absolutely vital to improving our diversity and also uplifting rural communities. So thank you for being here. How have the investments provided by Congress in the 2018 Farm Bill strengthened your ability to reach more students and recruit qualified faculty members at Elkhorn State?
Thank you, Chairwoman Stabenow. Great question. The support that we received through the scholarship program has been absolutely impactful to our ability to recruit talented students, to increase the interest in the agriculture fields, agriculture-related fields, and being able to come in and to be successful. It lowers the financial burden for those students, so they're able to concentrate on making sure that they're being prepared, trained, and ready to go out into the workforce. And so the scholarships have been monumental in supporting the work that we do and being able to serve the communities that we serve. As mentioned by my colleagues here, although there have been great gains because of the significant infrastructure challenges that we face in delivering a more modern experience and being able to address some of our modern challenges nationwide, being able to improve our facilities is monumental. I can't stress enough the impact or the need to be able to provide first-class facilities and attracting students and faculty and staff so they can continue the innovative research that will be needed in order to address many of the challenges that we have. Although the support has continued to be there, when you look at the communities that we serve, the needs are great, and they can be greater because in our areas, particularly in our rural communities, we lack so much. And so the investments need to be even greater in order to reach an additional level of parity for our communities. Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much. Mr. Elab, first of all, thank you again for being here. I know it's hard when you're operating a farm to be able to get away and be here, so your perspective is really important. How are the research needs of the organic sector unique, and what are the ways we can better support organic farmers when we're looking particularly at the research and extension programs?
I think the research needs are unique in several ways. One is because we are learning about systems, and I've said that over and over, but it really was a change of thinking as a grower from what can I do with a pinpoint precision, I'm going to change one thing, I'm going to change something else, to thinking of my whole farm as a unique entity. And so long-term projects that allow the system to become a system and to set, testing different ideas, looking at multiple answers. So if we're talking about beneficial insects, I want to support multiple beneficial insects, not just one. So if the climate changes in one year or another, that one or the other insect is going to help. And so we're going to have to look at larger perspectives. And the other thing, I think, is that we just need to really look at natural systems and learn from them. Because the natural systems themselves, when I watch and let the system do the work for me, I always learn something. I'm a lazy person. I don't want to have to go out and work. And so if I can let my farm do the work for me, and then I intervene when I absolutely need to, more power to it. I'd rather go to lunch, I'd rather have coffee, I'd rather do other things. So having a system on my farm and researching those systems, I think is very unique, but it also will benefit all growers.
Well, thank you very much. I'm sure you're not lazy. My guess is you're just very smart. So thank you for your testimony. I'm going to turn it over to Senator Boozman and apologize that we have a vote just started on a Michigan judge on the floor, and I need to be on the floor. So to my ranking member, I'm going to turn over the gavel. So here we go.
Thank you.
Yes, very good.
Thank you so much. A little responsibility here.
That's right.
So. Dr. Fields, welcome again to the Senate Agriculture Committee. We're so proud of the work that you're doing in Arkansas and really throughout the system. In your testimony, you highlight and as others have highlighted also, the considerable need for infrastructure, even at a system such as the University of Arkansas, where private and state resources are vast. Can you walk us through your specific needs? What research outcomes are we potentially losing by not investing in infrastructure across our land-grant institutions?
Certainly. Thank you for that question, Senator Boozman. As I mentioned, just at the University of Arkansas, our needs in terms of deferred maintenance total about $100 million. Our immediate needs there, we have buildings that we're trying to conduct 21st century research in, such as our food science building. We have the Arkansas Food Innovation Center. that's there. And so places like that where we're trying to do what's innovative, we're doing in substandard facilities. And I think that's the case nationally. When we talk about what we've missed, I can say that almost every university has missed opportunities to hire top faculty as a result of the infrastructure that exists. We've personally had 2 faculty members for an endowed position that we lost as a result of substandard facilities. We're trying to conduct low moisture research in a facility where we cannot get the relative humidity below 80%. And so we're doing things to try to, make this work, but there are several opportunities that we're missing. When we look at our opportunities to be competitive for extramural funding, the folks funding that research anticipate that we'll have the facilities necessary to conduct the research and to conduct that research at a high level. And at that point, we're missing a big opportunity based on where our facilities are. So we have, we've kind of tried to put together a strategy at the University of Arkansas, but I think nationally our land grant partners have looked at, ranking, priorities for facilities that give them an opportunity to be aggressive at taking advantage of things that are current issues and being able to address high technology and issues that exist throughout our nation.
Very good. Dr. Rainey, thank you for your work and for your highlighting several important programs. In my view, you demonstrate the ideal partnership between publicly and privately funded research and what is possible when this enterprise is working at its best. I guess the question that I have is, in addition to funding these key programs, what else can Congress do to unleash innovation in biotechnology and seed production?
Great question, thank you. Primarily, what we need is regulatory alignment between USDA, FDA, and EPA, and that's absolutely necessary to fully realize the potential for innovation in agriculture and to maintain America's position in agriculture leadership, and to ensure that our farmers have access to the latest tools, technologies, and plant varieties. So, we are here asking for investments in research at in a range of areas and a range of topics, but we need to make sure that the regulatory environment and policies are in place that allow innovation to reach farmers' fields and the consumer's plate. So, for example, gene editing technology has a lot of promise to make foods, to impact nutrition, as we were talking about when Dr. Jacobs-Young was here. So gene editing can make foods more palatable and last longer, but we need to have policies in place for those products to reach the market. So regulatory alignment between USDA, EPA, and FDA. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. As I mentioned in my opening statement, I continue to be concerned by our global food security situation. Talking to people like David Beasley, head of the World Food Program, we have a significant problem, especially in the next few years. Sri Lanka is not alone in pushing misguided policies that will have devastating impacts on food production. The Netherlands is currently forcing farmers to comply with ever-increasing environmental mandates or face a compulsory land buyout situation, which it's estimated will lose thousands of family farms there as a result of that. Countless nations continue to enact biotechnology bans, and if the European Union continues down its road, they risk having only marginal agricultural production left. List goes on and on. Inefficient production practices and misguided government mandates will negatively impact world hunger. I guess, again, anyone can jump in that would like to, but in your view, how can innovation help us continue producing food and fiber efficiently? What does Congress need to do to help you continue with the trajectory that we have on the chart? And I agree with you, Mr. Ida, your grandfather had the choices. The good news is that if you look at the chart, back in his year, the trajectory's gone up here with the increase, with the inputs, staying fairly the same. The other thing too is, and I agree with you totally in looking at systems, okay? The problem that we face so often here is we try and put the same system in every situation. In other words, and you know better than this, and you're an expert, all of you all are, but the system that works on your farm with your moisture content, with your soil, is different than the system that works where Dr. Fields grew up in Louisiana. So if anybody would comment very quickly, or I'm going to have to gavel myself down.
Well, if I could quickly respond, I think you actually pegged it. Yes, the systems are different. But the tenets of the system, the bases, so how do nutrients transform in soils, there are some consistencies. And as we face that our climate is changing, we're going to have to look to those other systems to see what we can do on our farm to change things to make them more resilient. So the system itself, I want to stress it's redundant, it's resilient, and that's going to be the important part. We're not going to do it overnight, and they are going to be different, and they're going to be regionally adapted, and that is the point. One size does not fit all in this changing world at this point, right. And so we're going to have to learn.
Senator Braun, thank you, and again, thank you for bringing that out. That really was my point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Rainey, we had a nice conversation earlier today and focused on a couple things. One was the increasing anxiety among farmers going through a year like 2022, where they most indicated to me, I visit all 92 counties. The last one was riding in a combine in Spencer County, just south of where I live, that they just made it through. All that uncertainty, and he and others have expressed they're worried about 2023. So I think that's even going to be a tougher scenario to get the crop out and all the inputs you actually need. So tell me what you think we need to do better that can approach through the R&D side, both revenue enhancement, through all the things that technology has maybe kind of weighed in on for agriculture, and then cost savings, because that elusive bottom line, which seems to go higher and higher in terms of the altitude of your revenues, and the profit margin absolutely stays the same. I think farmers could really be interested to seeing how it isn't so thin each year trying to craft a bottom line.
Okay, so so you're asking how to increase revenues, how for farmers, and increase the well, they're taking the chart away that showed we have much exponential increases in output with the same input.
And what are a few of the things that we need to either spend more money on? What are the breakthrough areas? Because that's the next thing I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
What are the 2 or 3 kind of most optimistic areas of research that would help craft a better profit either through revenue enhancement or cost reductions?
Right, and this goes back to what Senator Bozeman was talking about, his concern for global food security. And there are a number of technologies. I mean, I'm very hopeful about the outlook for global food security. There are a number of technologies that are yet to be explored or are yet to be deployed. Some promising technologies that need both investment and a favorable regulatory and policy environment include gene editing, as we've been talking about, or I mentioned earlier. Another promising area is predictive analytics, so-called predictive analytics. In the seed industry, that's a huge area of investment and cost savings, and will also bring more productive seeds to farmers. You mentioned that the farmers need to save money on inputs, and really I'm so excited about the See and Spray technology, which is where we use sensors and other just basically sensors to detect weeds and then deliver herbicides, in this case, in a very concentrated and effective way. So I think that the sensor-based technologies in general will really help farmers with their bottom line, though they are expensive to invest in, of course. And then I think the fourth promising area for the outlook of global food security, I'm not sure about saving the farmer's bottom line, but is the sort of information sharing and just national coordination around conservation practices. We really need, we've been talking about how in the future we're going to move towards even more sort of regional or localized solutions, but I think we need national coordination, discussion, communication, and education to, where information flows both ways. And I think AGARDA is really important to that. But going back to the farmer's bottom line, I think the land grants have a role in that with extension, and that we need an independent, unbiased source of information for farmers to make decisions. As you're saying, you need data for decisions, and it helps to have a third-party voice in that.
So when you're talking about discussion, I was asked to start the Senate Climate Caucus as a freshman senator when no one else would do it on my side of the aisle. We've come a long way. We actually passed a bill that went through the Senate 92-8, Growing Climate Solutions Act, which would have matched up good stewardship with pre-existing markets. Senator Bozeman was very important in getting that across the finish line. Well, alas, it's sitting over in the House and has for a year, and every farm group was for it. So you still run into political snags, and that is a place where I can tell you, in the 3 years since I've been there, not only agriculture, electric generation, industrial emitters, steel and concrete, transportation, all the CEOs, all the thought leaders in this country are recognizing it. In agriculture, since we emit, I think, only 10% through agriculture in the greenhouse gases, 25% across the world, we got a lot to show others. So I hope that that's going to be something on display for an issue that's important.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned conservation, and we've been talking about research and farmers, and an area to invest in, I think, is nationally coordinated on-farm research for conservation practices. I think that's where we're going to get the critical mass of data in place to, and analytics to start making, I guess, evidence-based decisions, policies, management decisions around conservation and climate mitigation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Braun, and thank you for your leadership on the Growing Climate Solutions bill, and we appreciate it. Again, thank the panel for being here. We had, you all did a great job. We learned a lot, and you had really significant participation from lots of members of the Senate. And so we appreciate you pushing your message out, and it really will help us as we try and get things in the future with the Farm Bill, and look forward to continuing to ask you for your advice. So with that, the hearing's adjourned.